Welcome back to Project Seawolf. So today is kind of a special episode. Every year around New Year's, we do a state of the project, which looks at everything that we've done over the past year. In this case, it's going to be over the past 2 years because last year I missed the state of the project because my children had just come home. They were born 2 months early, and so they were in the hospital for 2 months. And when they were ready to come home and go off of respiratory support, then that was around the same time as when the state of the project should have come out. And on top of that, I had no idea what my life was going to look like with children. So now, with things kind of stabilized, I can see kind of into the future and how we want to do everything. Timeline, the boat projects, everything is all coming together now that I have a pretty good idea of what life with children looks like. In the future, I might do state of the project separately as a Patreon episode. Because I don't think they're particularly relevant to YouTube. With YouTube, it's always big, grand, beautiful cruising grounds, stuff like that. Whereas State of the Project is kind of more of like behind the scenes, so what's going on, how I'm preparing for circumnavigation, my thoughts and feelings about the whole process. So there's a couple of sections that are part of the state of the project, and that is what's going on in the financial front, what's going on in the boatwork front, and what's going on in the route front. So where I want to cruise and how that's changed over time. And in this case, is going to be before cruising, or before circumnavigation. What I want to do with this boat in the Puget Sound and in the Pacific before I even cast off for circumnavigation. So there's a couple of financial goals that I want to meet before I cast off for the big sail, and preferably before I cast off for the big test, which I'll talk about later. The first being that I want this channel to be making about $800 a month or so. Right now we're not doing too bad considering we only started 2 years ago, and all this channel has been boat work and a little bit of cruising in the Puget Sound and some random stuff. But in the future, this channel will be a lot more focused. I remember starting to watch Sailing Uma and Salt and Tar and several other channels when they launched the boat. So I expect that once we're cruising, that the channel will grow a lot faster. But even so, current projections on Social Blade and looking at other channels and how they've grown over time, this channel is on track for that $800 a month. The YouTube ad revenue is a very small part of it. There's the Patreon and merch and high interest savings account that I want to set up. All this will be contributing to the $800 a month that I've researched as being the price point for starting the circumnavigation. And that will grow over time. And the route is pretty well tuned to how much it will cost. We're going to be starting out in fairly cheap places, like relatively cheap places like Mexico and South America, and ending up in relatively expensive places like the Mediterranean. So all these different factors have been kind of calculated into the budget. Another thing that I want to have done before I cast off is to be debt-free. As you might have heard, I have a couple of college degrees, one undergrad college degree, which is almost paid off now, and one hefty master's degree, which is most of my student loan debt. And on all fronts, fantastic progress has been made over the past couple of years, and should be seeing zero student debt hopefully by the time this boat's launched. Another piece of debt that I have is this boat itself. It was financed by my family, and I'm very, very grateful for their investment in this and myself, and I'm dedicated to paying that off as well. So that has also steadily gone down as well, and hopefully will be completely done around the same time as the student debts are paid off. Another thing that'll greatly affect our financial situation is when the kids start school and I can get a job again. Right now I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I quit my job to take care of my kids full-time because at the time my job was paying less than what it would cost for childcare. So it just makes financial sense for me to be home with the kids and for my wife to be off doing her neurology degree at UW, University of Washington. And we're coming up on the end of that journey at UW. She's just about to apply for residency. She's had a lot of really strong signals from organizations that are looking to hire her. So things are looking great, and we should be able to stay on the West Coast, which is even better because flying in to work on my boat for a week at a time would be difficult on all fronts, with the kids, with the flying, with the travel and all that. It's just not a good way to be living. But we don't have to worry about that anymore because we'll probably be on the West Coast and just a drive away from being at the boat. So that's fantastic. I want to talk about my feelings a little bit about this whole YouTube thing and circumnavigation and making music for YouTube and all that. Looking back at my videos, I feel so much like I'm on the spectrum. I feel like I am not all there sanity-wise, and I just can't believe what I'm doing or saying most of the time. And you know, that also plays into ideas of grandeur and wanting to circumnavigate and all that. And then I look back at my grad school and doing my thesis, and I felt the exact same way about that. Like, I wanted to spend a year on the water counting seals and mapping out where all the seals are and living on a boat, which I didn't have at the time. And yeah, found a boat. It was very cheap, and fixed it up, and that all happened, and it was fantastic. So it's those examples, my thesis, undergrad, my trips to Antarctica, these things have been huge roadblocks, ideas of grandeur that I've seen through to the end and really capitalized on. So I don't see this as any different. It's just a process. I'm building through it. There's a lot of naysayers, and there's a lot of people cheering me on, and a lot of the people cheering me on are on YouTube. And so thank you guys, because it really does help my mental health that there are people saying you could do it, and it makes me really happy. With the music, so I know there's a lot of great copyright-free, royalty-free music out there, including on YouTube. However, every time I've used royalty-free music, I've gone and posted the episode, bits and pieces of the episode, to other places, and it's been taken down because a lot of the royalties-free content, music and such, is only copyright free in YouTube or particular applications. I know I can get a subscription to get royalty free music from certain places, but people using those services have also had their videos taken down for a week or so to sort out copyright stuff, and it's just a nightmare. And so I've really, both for myself and for the channel, I've really enjoyed my exploration into guitar and other instruments, and it's really grown on me, and it's really become more of a thing for me. Like, I really enjoy it. I really like to sit down with my kids and play guitar, and over the past few months I've learned several chords. I've learned the cowboy chords. I've enjoyed some plucking, and I really want to explore it further and get better and better at it, so that I have a lot to do, even when I'm just sitting at anchor. There's just something about a good guitar and playing a song that really makes you feel less isolated out in the water. And that was the case during my thesis as well, as I always had a guitar with me when I was counting seals out on the water. And even if I didn't know how to play the guitar at that time, I found a lot of comfort in just playing some strums and watching the boats go by. And it's gonna keep going, but it's gonna get a lot better, I hope. I really hope it's gonna get better. So going back to finances, there's also another goal that I want to have done before we set off on the big sail, and that's having $30,000 to $40,000 in a high interest bank account, and that will come with some savings. Right now, at the very beginning of our journey with kids and me not working, it's very difficult to have savings. A good portion of that is going to come from me selling a lot of the stuff that I need for life on land, like my car, motorcycle, stuff like that. Those things will be sold and put into the savings account, and hopefully grow while I'm sailing at a decent pace. So after the kids were born, I really had to think about my my life's schedule, and I like to plan about 10 years ahead, and this is no different. Before I started this project 2 years ago, I had kind of a branching path where, do I want to pursue marine mammalogy and do a PhD, which I probably would have started by now if I had chosen that path? Or do I want to see the world? And how do I want to see the world, and how is that possible that I'll see the world on a certain budget. And I picked the latter. I want to see the world, I want to see species, I want to explore, and I want to make the most of my life while I'm still young and without any chronic health problems, which I know will be coming in my 40s and 50s. So my goal was to start sailing by the time I'm 40, and currently that is on track. Right now I'm about to turn 32 years old, which is, you know, it's great that I'm having kids this young, because I don't know how I would do it with any less energy. So there's pros and cons, and a big pro is also that I can get a lot done on the boat before I leave. I can focus on my kids early on, and I'm not missing out on any of the baby stuff, any of the big milestones traveling at that time. So yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons to the timing of everything. So let's get into the schedule for the rebuild and when I want to start cruising. So over the next year, so from January 2025 to January 2026, I want to have the interior pretty much done. I want to have all the structures completely done, painted, everything. I want to have these chain plates ready to go. I want to have all the hatches completed. I want to have all the fiberglass work for the interior done, because as soon as the fiberglass dust problem is not so much of an issue anymore, then I can have more people on board to help me out. I feel bad having people come out to help right now because of all the fiberglass dust. For the deck work and bottom work and outside stuff, I think it can be mitigated significantly, but while we're in an inside space in the cold in the winter, it's just not a great thing to do to a friend. So yeah, over the next year I want to have all the interior work done, and during that time there's going to be a lot of exterior projects. I mean, you saw me rebuild the bow, and I'm not going to touch the exterior until spring as of right now, because it's just so wet and cold here. The epoxy wouldn't set right. I don't want to get moisture in places that I don't want it, like in the coring and all that. There's a lot of projects that are on hold until spring, but there's plenty to do inside until then, and I've got a heater going, so things inside will cure correctly, but things outside will not cure. And that also gives me some time to prepare financially for exterior projects and plan more carefully and get input from you guys before I start those projects. So right now I want to have exterior projects complete by February 2027. Exterior projects will start again around May 2026, and so I'm going to be doing a little bit interior, a little bit exterior over the next summer, and hopefully it'll all come together mostly over the summer, and we'll get the new bowsprit on. We'll work towards getting the mast ready to be put up back on. With the limitations of the yard, I need to keep the mast off until all the bottom work is done, which is crazy. But basically they need to put a big tent over the entire boat for me to legally be able to do the bottom work here. And so to put that big tent over my boat, they need to have the mast off, which is another requirement, which is why most people don't do it, because you have to pay for the crane to come by and pick up the mast, and then you have to pay for the tent to come over, and so it's just doubling up on everything. But my mast already needed to come down because of these chain plates, so it works out okay. And starting in March, April, and May, we're going to be doing bottom work. So that's going to be repainting the boat, repairing any blistering, building up the rudder channel, if there's any more, doing the through-hull repairs, and repainting the boat. So a while back when I had a job, I pre-bought the topside paint that I wanted, and that's Fire Red by Total Boat, I think Total Boat. If you've cruised on the California coast or in Washington, you know colors pop in the fog, and it looks pretty good on camera too. So I'm picking out kind of more colorful options than I would normally, and so I think having a red boat would be really cool. It's not great in the tropics because it fades so fast, but for now, what I have is Fire Red, and then I was just given 3 buckets of red bottom paint, and so now I'm gonna have a red on red boat, which doesn't look too bad as long as the bootstrap's prominent. So yeah, I mean, if someone's flying over and my boat's turned turtle for whatever reason, which it should never because I have a full keel, then it'll all be red. Usually red is not my color. Usually I tend to avoid red, like red shirts and stuff like that, but I think it would look good on a boat. I think it does look good on a boat. Seeing red boats on anchorage is just like, oh, it stands out, because you can say, oh, that's my boat over there, and people immediately like which one? The one with the two masts on it? No, it's the red boat. Oh yeah, it's the red boat. So, and that also plays into my research. Right now, NOAA has approved our next research paper on killer whales, and it will revolutionize the way we look at transient killer whales off the coast. And that is a huge step. Because with NOAA's name on it and NOAA's backing, the research goes a lot farther. So, and this is not an insignificant claim. This paper has some very significant claims in it about transient killer whales and their life. So it's going to be a big deal, and I can't wait to talk more about that to you guys coming up when it is published in the next month or two, I hope. Publication takes a while, but yeah, look forward to that come spring. And with a red boat, and if I get research permits with my research partner, we'll already have a research red boat to go out and find killer whales and collect data. So that will be awesome. So following the bottom work in March, April, May, then we can hopefully launch the boat. So in May of 2027, I would really like to launch this boat. And from there, we'll be doing a couple of shakedown cruises in the Strait of Juan de Fuca. The Strait of Juan de Fuca is a pretty good test on boats. I mean, first, of course, we're going to be doing some protected sailing around here in the bays, just make sure all the systems function. And then once we do that, then we'll do a couple of tests out in the strait, make sure the boat can take wind and the chain plates I've designed can take it, which they should be able to. And if the shakedown cruises go well, then we'll hit all the Washington Marine State Parks in the Puget Sound and Salish Sea. So that'll be a 2-month cruise. Well, if we're fast, it'll go by in a month, but a 2-month cruise across the summer of 2027. We'll hit all the Washington State Parks, and we'll go back to some of my favorite places in the South Sound as part of that, and a lot of cruising the San Juans. Really, for the first time, enjoying this boat the way she was made to be enjoyed. And at that time, the kids will be turning 4. So 2 3-year-olds on board with my sister-in-law and maybe some friends once in a while doing this cruise. I think it'll be a pretty good bunch of people. And we might not even have the kids on board for that section because they're going to be in their terrible twos. So it might be a little bit too much to be cruising for the first time with kids who are totally emotionally unregulated. So that being said, I have no idea what a 3-year-old even looks like. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes with kids. But that's about their age at that time. And I should be able to get the time. You know, I won't be that far away. So it works out pretty well to be doing a lot of stuff in the Puget Sound. And I assume that I'm going to discover some things that I want to change, or some work that needs to be done on the boat, or at least have the boat out of the water so it's not corroding actively. So I'm going to haul out after that summer, and we'll spend another couple months on the hard here. And during that time, episodes will come out about the Washington State Parks. I might do some behind the scenes on Patreon where we do some boat work. But that's when a lot of the really awesome content should be coming out is around July 2027. Following that winter on the hard, we'll do another shakedown cruise just around the San Juans and Strait of Juan de Fuca to make sure everything's set, good to go. And for the summer of 2028, I would like to sail around Vancouver Island. Doing a circumnavigation of Vancouver Island can be a little bit treacherous out on the exposed part of the island. It's a good test for this boat. I think this boat has been almost all the way around Vancouver Island. It's been up around the Brooks Peninsula and back, and then it's also been up the Strait of Georgia and back. So it's gone kind of like halfway up both sides of Vancouver Island as far as I know. One of the previous owners did that. But I would like to go all the way around. I would like to see sea wolves. I would like to potentially see sperm whales off Juan de Fuca Canyon. But just generally, sticking kind of close to shore and island hopping around and seeing wildlife in some of the areas that I've done a lot of research in. And that'll be this boat's first experience out in the open ocean since the Atlantic, I think, is going around the north part of Vancouver Island. Following Vancouver Island, I'm going to find in-water moorage in the Puget Sound. I kept my last boat at Port Orchard, which was relatively cheap, and I definitely enjoyed it there. Quick access to a lot of state parks and islands in Seattle. So we might end up there, but if we're in Seattle and money's not as much of an issue, then maybe I'll go back to Shill Shoal. That was kind of a nice starting off point as well. So regardless, I'd like to keep the boat in the water, sail it on and off throughout the winter, getting it ready for the next big trip. In spring of 2029, the boat will be paid off. Hopefully my student loans will be paid off. The kids will be 5, which I think is a pretty good age to get them started on sailing some more. Residency will be hopefully coming to an end, but my wife might decide to specialize in something else. But I think it would be a good time to hit the Inside Passage and go up to Alaska and back. That's something I've always wanted to do. I think it's a good test on boat and navigation skills. People learn a ton doing it, so I'd like to do that. And if I'm really confident, maybe I'll hit Haida Gwaii. That's a pretty significant detour, but I haven't exactly planned out the route that I want to take on the Inside Passage, but I think it'd be a great trip. And doing that over the course of five months, potentially with the kids, potentially partially with the kids, it's all still in our neighborhood in the Pacific Northwest. So there's a lot of support, a lot of potential. I probably will see people that I know on that passage. So I think it'll be a great test for myself and the boat. And then following that, I would like to take the boat to the outer coast of Washington. I would like to keep the boat in Westport for 2 years and do some coastal sailing off the coast there. So there's the Quinault Canyon, there's the Grays Canyon, there's this Juan de Fuca Canyon, and all those canyons attract really interesting species of wildlife. It'll also be a good time for me to approach the researchers that have offered to equip my boat with some passive acoustic recording instruments so that we can find certain species of beaked whale and figure out where they live by putting points on the map where we detect them with the passive acoustics, because they're really hard to find otherwise out in the water. They just come up and then they're gone forever. Like they're a very difficult species to find, and so a lot of species of beaked whale we don't really know where they live. And as a marine mammal mapper, I would love to start nailing that down, that distribution, so we can start protecting them in the areas that they exist. So those 2 years, from fall of 2029 to February of 2031, I would like to be on the coast and doing coastal sailing and learning the waves that way. It'll be a good test for me too if this is something I really want to do. The inland waterways of the Salish Sea are kind of really forgiving to boaters, and I'd like to see what it's like out on the ocean. I mean, I've been out in the ocean a lot. I've spent a lot of time looking for marine mammals on large and small power boats, but I'd like to actually sail it myself. And see what it's like. So, I mean, if somebody is out at Westport with a sailboat, please let me know. I'd love to go out with you. But in 2031, then we start to do some interesting stuff, I think. In 2031, I would like to launch from Westport and sail across the Pacific. So I would like to sail to Japan via Hawaii, and that will be the first big pelagic test for myself and this boat. In the previous episode, I said I wanted to take this boat across the Pacific 3 times. The first 2 times being this North Pacific Gyre trip that I want to do. I'd like to sail from Westport and island hop to Japan, hitting some Japanese islands that most people would never get to see otherwise, and potentially seeing some species that I wouldn't get to see otherwise. So hopefully I hit a lot of the North Pacific seabirds doing this as well, because on the circumnavigation route we're going to be mostly in the Southern Pacific. So the North Pacific and the North Pacific Gyre and the species that live in the North Pacific Gyre are going to be missed by that Southern Pacific trip. So in March or April of 2031, I expect to land in Hawaii and then continue from Hawaii to Japan, which is no small feat. The people that I've met who have sailed to Japan are legends. So I would like to join them as somebody who has sailed, who can say that they've sailed from Seattle to Japan and back. While I don't agree with their view on whales or the politics around that. I have taken 3 years of Japanese and been really immersed in that culture before, and I'd really like to actually go see Japan. It'll also check off Asia on my continents, and I only have 2 continents left that I need to step foot on, and that's Asia and Australia. So setting foot on Japan will mean when I get to Australia, that means I've been to all 7 continents. Which in itself is another feat. Again, all working towards some of these big goals that I have that I want to do before or around the time I'm 40. So there's a lot of motivation to go to Japan for me. On the way back from Japan, I want to hit the Aleutians. The Aleutians and the coast of Alaska have a lot of species that I want to see, including belugas, tons and tons of seabirds. Particularly in the Aleutians. There's, of course, there's killer whales up there too. There's pods of killer whales off Japan too. So there's also a lot of wildlife motivation for me to go to those particular places. And then that leads neatly into the Inside Passage. And so I'll take the Inside Passage south back home by October 2031. I imagine after that extended trip, I will want to haul out again here in Anacortes, hopefully the same yard, and do whatever work I find that needs to be done. And there'll be another 2-year stretch from November 2031 to around January 2033 where I'll be hauled out doing anything that needs to be done. Before I leave for the Japan trip, we're going to outfit this boat with anything that it needs pelagic wise, like the wind vane and autopilot. Here in the Puget Sound, those pieces of equipment don't really make sense. Even radar is kind of like, that's a bit extra. But heading out into the ocean, I want to have all those pieces of equipment, especially if I'm solo sailing most of the time. And for the trip back down the Inside Passage, might be able to have the kiddos on board, so pick them up in Seward or catch a can and cruise back with them. That would be very nice to have the kids again on board. During this time, they should be in school and have childcare pretty much taken care of and all that. So it all lines up pretty well. So leading up to the big day in March of 2033, I'm going to be doing a lot of financial work. I'm going to be doing a lot of prep work, getting my passport prepared, getting an enhanced driver's license, which should last 10 years. Hopefully getting a 6-pack so that I can get a discount on international insurance. Just a lot of prep work and really nailing down the route and getting all the media equipment that I want to take with me and contacting the people that have offered to put me up or meet me in certain places to coordinate all that. There'll be plenty of time to prepare, and I imagine I'll be launching the January of 2033 to into the Puget Sound and mooring, getting a moorage at Port Orchard or somewhere so that the boat is all ready to go. It's already in the water and everything after a period on the dry. So that's all planned out, and then sailing it down to Percival Landing in Olympia in March of 2033 to cast off for the Circumnavigation. Now with if you watched my previous State of the Project, I wanted to start out the Circumnavigation with a North Pacific Gyre route, but we will have already done that. So from Olympia, I'd like to sail it all the way down to Mexico. I would like to go all the way to La Paz and get into Baja, and I'd like to stay there for a while. I'd like to explore. Yeah, over the course of 3 months, I'd like to explore the Sea of Cortez. And by the time I'm ready to leave, then the kids will hit summer break, and I'll point my bow south and we'll head to the Galapagos. And I can't imagine a better way to turn 10 than cruising in the cruising up to the Galapagos and getting on a tour and seeing the Galapagos. I was there in 2015 and I missed a few species after that trip. I missed the woodpecker finch and the waved albatross and the land iguanas. So those are some target species that I want to find. When you get to, because of the restrictions in the Galapagos, you have to take an organized tour to be able to set foot on land and all that. So I'll cruise up to Port Villemere, where I've been before, and we'll hop on, probably pick up the kids in Baltra, where the where the airport is, and wife, and we'll do a vacation in the Galapagos, which will be lovely. I'd love that. And from the Galapagos, we'll head down the South American coast, probably send the kids off from Baltra again. And then I want to hit the Peruvian coast where there's the Humboldt penguin, and also the Inca terns and a couple other species that I want to see. And we'll be heading south and south and south, all the way to Concepcion, Chile? Yeah, Concepcion. About halfway down the Chilean coast, we'll stop. And hopefully by that time I will have found Humboldt penguins and the Inca terns, and those are the big species that I want to see on the coast. And then we'll point the bow west and sail to the Crusoe Islands, where I'll meet up with my contact Charles Nelson, who runs tours out there. And on the big island of Robertson Crusoe, I would like to find or Crusoe Islands, I'd like to find the endemic species hummingbird, the endemic seal, and there's another endemic species on the big island itself. And then from there, when conditions are right, then sail to Selkirk. And Selkirk is the second and kind of a big island, but nowhere near the size of Robinson Crusoe. And there's only a small fishing community that lives there. And I've coordinated with my friend Charles on how that would be possible. And there is an anchorage that is usually used by ships that are visiting to restock the island. So for a short time, I would like to be also on Selkirk and explore Selkirk. There is a endemic species that is very, very, very rarely seen, mostly because it's on Selkirk, at the top of Selkirk. So you have to climb the stairs all the way to the top of the island and back to find it. So I would like to find that species in the fern tree forests and then head back to the boat and cast off for Easter Island. So by October 2033, I'd like to be sailing across the Pacific to Easter Island. And from Easter Island, we'll be island hopping across the South Pacific, eventually finding our way to New Zealand in March of 2034. And so for March and April, I would like to do a figure eight around New Zealand. I'd like to see the Hall of Arms, or the Arms Hall fjords in the southwest corner of the South Island. And of course, there's tons of endemic species in New Zealand. I hope I'll find a naturalist that can take me deeper into inland, and we can find some species that I never thought I'd be able to see in my life. My wife is pretty obsessed with New Zealand, so I can see her coming out and hanging out with me, trying to find some of those species, especially for the inland trips. And then in the austral winter of June, July, August of 2034, I'd like to be on the Golden Coast of Australia, cruising the coast and heading down to Tasmania eventually, and potentially sailing around the southern cape of Tasmania. Certain organizations don't count a circumnavigation unless you've done the southern capes. So if I really want to pursue that, then I'll have to sail around and go around the southern cape of Tasmania. And I'd love to see Organ rocks and get all those endemic Tasmanian species. There's a lot of beaked whales off the southern tip of Tasmania, and they're the rarest species in the world as well. So there's a lot of incentive for me to go to Tasmania and around the southern tip. So that's going to be a strong possibility. But after that, we'll head back up the Golden Coast, hit the Great Barrier Reef. Hopefully not literally hit the Great Barrier Reef, but around that area, and head around the north part of Australia. While I'm cruising in Australia on the Golden Coast, the kids will have summer break. They'll be in 4th grade at the time, so I hope I can have them out and we can sail together along the Australian coast. And then when they get off the boat, then they start 5th grade. And that's a pretty. I remember I took my first big international trip in 5th grade, and changed the way I see the world in a lot of ways. So I think that'd be a good age for them. Around January of 2035, I'd like to be in Indonesia, just in the southern part, only places where it's safe. Hitting Komodo, mostly because there's several endemic species on Komodo, including the dragons, but also birds. And there's some places in Indonesia where I've seen sailing learning by doing go that I'd really like to go to as well. So those will be on my list of places to hit as we head along the north part of Australia. And I think it'd be good to take the north part of Australia a little slow because there's some pretty treacherous waters there. Some pretty Strait of Torres, I think, is there, and I know that's a pretty bad one, especially for shipping container strikes and all that. So 2034, so yeah, ending 2034 in Indonesia and starting 2035, hopefully at Christmas Island, crossing the Indian. So in early 2035, we'll be starting on the east side of the Indian Ocean at Christmas Island, and then casting off and sailing for Mauritius and Reunion Islands off of Madagascar. There are, again, several species of Indian Ocean birds and marine mammals that I want to see along the way. So I'm going to be always keeping an eye out for them. And we'll keep sailing until we hit Reunion and Mauritius. I haven't fully set my heart on the east coast of Madagascar because I don't know exactly where you would check into Madagascar and how safe it is in some of the bays along there. So I know I don't want to sail around the north side of Madagascar. That's where a lot of really bad piracy happens. So yeah, we're going to be playing it really safe on this trip. I really don't want to take any unnecessary piracy risks. So as tempting as Madagascar is because of all the endemic species, if I can't find a good way to do it, then we might have to miss it on this trip. But all these roads are leading to South Africa. So we'll roll into Cape Town, hopefully after a fairly uneventful trip around the Cape, and we'll hit Table Mountain. Maybe I'll get on a safari that'll go inland a little bit. Again, a lot of the reason why I'm sailing is to see species of wildlife that I otherwise would never be able to. So exploring Cape Town a little bit will be nice for species. If I can get on a boat to Tristan da Cunha in the southern Atlantic in a place that I don't really want to sail to, then that might be a good place for it. If I can find the contacts for that. There is a species of penguin that lives there, and a species of thrush that lives there. You can't set foot on land, and so the only ways you could see them is by getting really lucky and taking a boat from either South Africa or Argentina, and like mostly a fishing boat, and then they take you for like a day trip out to do a lap or a little bit of the coast of Tristan da Cunha to try and see those species. So that would be a possibility for that area. From Cape Town, I'd like to hit the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. There's, again, a few species I want to see. It's a really unique landscape. It's a beautiful place. There's cool shipwrecks and islands just offshore, and I'd really like to spend some time there. But as we get farther and farther north along the Namibian coast, we need to start thinking about continuing the circumnavigation and head west again to St. Helena. There's a few species I'd like to see on St. Helena, particularly some seals, but there's also birds and species of a plant that I want to see there. I love setting foot on really out of the way islands and seeing these remote islands and the species that have evolved there. And I think these islands in the center of the Atlantic are going to be really, really interesting. And I imagine there's some species of marine mammal that like the mid-Atlantic trench, which these center Atlantic islands are part of. So we're going to be probably doing a little bit of research along the way there too. From St. Helena, hit Cat Hill. We'll hit Cat Hill around June of 2035 and continue our way up the center of the Atlantic, hitting some of the islands that are pretty far out of the way. There's also a Brazilian island that is kind of like a resort island that's really far off the coast of Brazil, that I would like to hit and see if I can find any cool species there. I literally know nothing about it other than it has some resorts, and I'm sure some pretty important Brazilian people go there every year or something. But I'd like to visit it and see what I can find there. And then from there, it's a pretty big hop up to the Caribbean. So I'll spend around September of 2035 or August 2035, I would like to be in the Caribbean. And that time works out pretty well. My wife has spent some time in Trinidad and Tobago, which if you don't know, is in the southern part of the Caribbean, and probably where I will the first stop along the islands in there. And so I think it'd be a good place to bring the kids for their summer break, and we'll do some birding there. I know she has some birder contacts there that will take us out, and we'll find some pretty hard to find species through them. And then we'll move up from Trinidad Tobago to the Grenadines and Guadalupe and the Virgin Islands and the Bahamas. Just over the course of a few months, we'll be moving our way north, island hopping up the Caribbean where it's safe. Again, always where it's safe. And then originally I had planned to stop in Florida and dry tortugas and see the Floridian cruising grounds, but I don't think I want to spend much time in Florida. And looking at the currents and the maps, I think it would make more sense, and it would skip a lot more of the coast if I went to Bermuda instead. So I'd like to sail from the Bahamas to Bermuda. And please leave a comment in the comments if this doesn't make any sense, because I know literally nothing about cruising to Bermuda and back. So let me know if sailing from the Bahamas to Bermuda to New York makes any sense, because that's what I want to do. And that's kind of like riding diagonally along the Gulf Stream. So I imagine it'll work out, but it'll just not be as efficient as following the US East Coast up. I don't really have any strong feelings about visiting the Carolinas or Virginia. So I think heading out to Bermuda, where I'm legitimately interested in species in the culture, and then sailing to New York after that is the route that I personally should take. At which time this boat will have kind of circumnavigated, because I plan on stopping in Huntington, New York, where this boat was built in 1969. This boat was shipped across land sometime in the early mid-70s. So if I find if I go back to the where the boatyard launched this boat, then this boat will have technically been around the world once before me. So I think that would be a really important symbolic stop along the way. And that will be in early spring of 2036. Would be when this boat is back in the Northeast where it's from. And from there we'll hit its historic cruising grounds off the coast of Maine and up to Halifax, Canada. And we'll be preparing for the next Atlantic crossing. So from Halifax and the Northeast, of North America, I would like to head east to Ireland, crossing the Atlantic, and visit some places in Ireland that I have pretty good friends in. God, I love Ireland. I love the people of Ireland. They're so nice. It's one of the few countries that I would be happy to raise my kids in. I just love Ireland. So you can look forward to spending some time in Ireland on this channel. And from there we'll hit Scotland and go through the Scotland locks up into the North Sea and Norway. Now this part is a little bit tricky, and we might end up in Norway for a year, or in the North Sea or the Baltic for a year, because we're going to be hitting Norway kind of close to the middle of summer. So if I want to spend any significant time in the Baltic, then I might need to spend an extra year in the North Sea, which, would be okay. I might find a marina in Ireland or in the UK to keep the boat at, and come back, spend time with the kids. Or I really want to avoid that. I really want to be completely immersed in this longitudinal journey, but it might be necessary for me, for some legal reasons, like renewing my driver's license or something, to come back for a short time over the winter. But it is very important to me that we hit Finland, because in Finland they have the Sami seal, and I'd really like to see the Sami seal. And that seal lives inland on a lake, so we need to head to one of the big towns in Finland, and then take a car to the lake and find the seal. So it's so ridiculous to say all this, and again, I'm questioning my hardwiring and my neurology, and if I'm all there just talking about this trip, I feel like, again, ideas of grandeur, it might never happen, blah blah blah, and I just, I've structured it, I've financed it, I've planned it, I've mapped it out. All the other big trips that I've planned in my life that have taken me to the Arctic Ocean, to the Antarctic twice, these are things that I have meticulously planned out and financed for, and they worked out. So just hoping this all comes together in the way that, kind of in a way that I planned. So from Scandinavia, I plan on sailing down the European coast to the Mediterranean. And in the Mediterranean, I have some friends, Zoltan, who I expect to meet up in the Aegean. And in the Aegean, I want to find the monk seal, the Mediterranean monk seal. It's also a hotspot for sperm whales and the deeper parts. So there's a few places that I want to hit in the Mediterranean that I'm not fully decided on, because the more I find out about the Mediterranean, the more I hate it. Especially the Italian coast. Apparently it's just a nightmare to even exist in Italy or visit a beach in Italy, because it's all private and you have to pay just all these random people to access anything. So as beautiful as it is, and as much as I've studied art history, and as much as I've studied the Italian history and Grecian history, I just don't know if I want to deal with all that. So probably going to be spending most of our time on islands and remote Greek places in the Mediterranean, and then heading back out and hitting the Canaries on the way back. So we would be hitting the Canaries around March of 2038 or 2039, depending on what happens in Northern Europe. If we end up having more time than I expected, or if the weather conditions allow, I would like to hit Cape Verde off of Africa. There's some endemic species there that I would like to see. It also sets you up for a pretty good crossing to the Caribbean. So Cape Verde's high on the maybe list. But again, we're going to be crossing the Atlantic in mid-spring, early summer, back to the Caribbean, where we'll hit some of the interior Caribbean islands, like in San Blas and around Panama, in preparation to cross Panama. I've also toyed with the thought of going back down the South American coast and going to my favorite town in the whole world right now, Ushuaia, Argentina. And if I plan on doing all the Southern Capes, then that might be the way I have to go, because then I can do the Southern Cape or just go through the Beagle Channel. Again, some cool species that live there. Might be able to hop on a boat and go to Tristan da Cunha or to South Georgia. If you know anything about South Georgia, it's a really hot spot for a lot of species, millions and millions of penguins and seals. So if I have the opportunity to do that, or if I feel comfortable doing that, then I'd like to do that. So either after going through Panama or heading through the Beagle Channel, then we'll head up the west coast of the Americas to back home, stopping briefly in Central America and in Mexico. If weather conditions and the currents are just unbearable, then perhaps I'll head out to do the North Pacific gyre back, or at least get out of the coastal currents that are the Baja Bash, as they say, as we go up the coast of North America. And that puts me back in Washington around November or October 2038, which will be just in time for my kid's 15th birthday. And just in time for them to start high school. So all of it, unless I spend a year in the North Sea or I get stuck in the South Pacific or something, if all else goes to plan, then I'll be back for the start of high school for my kids, which I think is an important time in their lives. A time where parents fear resentment, and I am definitely fearing the resentment of my children by doing this trip at all. But it's something that I've kind of built my life around, something that I've been planning to do for years, and something that gives me purpose, a lot of purpose, and I want to do it. And hopefully the kids get a lot out of it as well. Hopefully they learn a lot really practical knowledge sailing, and perhaps maybe they want to go around again with me. Be a nice way to finish high school, I think. At the end of high school, maybe during high school we'll get another project boat and build that up for them, or maybe we'll take this boat around again. It's really an open book after the Circumnavigation, the first one. coming out of this trip, I will probably have photographed around 3,000 to 5,000 species of bird, which is about 50% of the species in the world, which is phenomenal. That puts you at one of the top birders in the world, just by saying that you've seen them, let alone photographing them, which is my personal rule. I only count birds and species that I photograph. And that is the big motivator for me to do this trip, is I want to see as many species as I can of birds and marine mammals, as well as get a ton of practical experience and a lot of time traveling, and a lot of time slow traveling, experiencing places and people and cultures. And I think focusing on wildlife does that really well. When you're in a place and you're focusing on trying to find wildlife, it's really immersive. I don't think there's a better way to really be more in touch with the land or the place than to be searching it feverishly for its inhabitants. Birds and mammals. So that's the current state of things. I didn't want to do this video without any boat work because I feel like I do a lot of talk and not a lot of action right now, especially with these monotonous interior jobs where it feels like no big changes are happening, which is very demoralizing generally. So I think getting some things done on the boat today will be a nice cherry on top for all the talk that I've been doing. So let's get into the boat work. All right, I've cleared out the main SETI area. Oh man, it looks so nice with that tools and clutter, and I mean, you can imagine with all the cushionings and the paint that it's gonna look very, very nice. So with these little hatches, we have, I tested this out the way that we did it in one of the previous episodes, and the magnet would not reach through the layers of foam and fiberglass. So I found out that if I inset it into here and put the magnet there, even though the magnets touch, it should be a good hold. So that's what I'm gonna do with the rest of them. I mean, I wanted to start with this one because it's small, it's in the corner, it's easy to reach. I have all this space for my right arm to be doing stuff. So when I get to these ones, it'll be more straightforward. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those panels, put a hole in the middle for your finger, grind out a little indent in the adapter to attach a magnet, and then epoxy those magnets in and install the hinge. All right, hey, look at that. That looks pretty clean. Yeah, so all that's left is to use some thickened epoxy to secure the magnets in where they are. And also I want to put some thickened epoxy along the corners, and maybe some epoxy along where there's some exposed foam. And then yeah, that'll be it. Look at that. Storage, and it works exactly the way I envisioned. Haha. Excellent. Now there's some further refinement that I could do, in that I could install something that like a flange that extends over the sides here, just like a thin piece of rubber or something. And then also I could put some rubber dampeners here in the corners, or just really thin, to mitigate any rattling that could occur. But these are also going to be behind cushions, so they should be good, except when it's in bed mode, that's exposed. So I still might want to put dampeners on there because it might not always be cushioned. So something to consider in the future, but for now I just want to get it all secured and epoxied in. Oh my goodness, it's like stepping into a whole nother world now. Oh, it's gonna be so nice when everything is painted and finished. Oh, look at that. I just can't get over it. It just feels so good to see some progress, something complete. Yes! Oh, excellent. So today, because we're getting kind of low on the total boat resin, I'm going to use some of my reserve wet system stuff that I believe Sailing Mig gave me this hardener, and then I went out and bought the 105 resin part. So 3 to 1, so it should be pretty efficient, and because it's epoxy, it's all going to be the same stuff in this project. Maybe in the next project I'll use polyester. All right, the magnets are inset. I've used broken magnets on the other side to help keep them in place so they shouldn't move when I place the thickened epoxy on there. So I don't even need clamps using the magnets. To give you an example of how powerful these magnets are, I mean, look at that. That's pretty cool. I'm using these as spacers so that the thickened epoxy stays underneath these magnets up here. Move these back a little bit so that the thickened epoxy doesn't drizzle on them and glue them in place. But again, they kind of control the location of the magnet, so I'm gonna have to be careful when I move them. Sweet. All right, everything is set in place. I don't even need these clamps. I just realized. And yeah, let's mix up the epoxy and finish this job out. Oh, I hate leaks. All right, all the adapters are laminated now with the thickened epoxy, and all the exposed foam is now laminated with thickened epoxy. The magnets are all stuck in with thickened epoxy, and I went around and in these panels that I did last time, I applied some more thickened epoxy just to like fill out the edges. They're already fiberglassed in, so that should be pretty good. It's not like it's gonna be the last time I make thickened epoxy, so not too worried about it if I sand it back and there's some gaps or something. I also went to these adapters and laminated around the edges where I think there's gonna be some exposed foam that interfaces with the hatches. So it just really just solidifies it some more. So I also filled in that big hole up here. I'm not even sure what it was ever used for, but that's all filled in now as well. Just all around a good time with the thickened epoxy. Anywhere I I think it needed it. If you stuck around to the end of the video, thank you for watching. Thank you to all my patrons and all my supporters and my family for helping me make this happen. Thank you for sticking around and listening to the state of the project for 2025. I think it's important to reiterate goals and to look forward at what I want this boat to be, to help me to continue to work on the boat in the ways that I am, to make it as solid as possible so that we can do these epic adventures. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.